Hey everyone, welcome to the debut episode of This Week in People. What is This Week in People? You know, a lot of my time I spend curating resources across the people, talent, recruiting, future of work landscape, and I thought maybe I will pilot this program to see if I can do a weekly video recap of some of the key things that stood out to me. So let's dig in. You know, we're always talking about this idea of shifting to remote, and obviously 2020 has seen this happen at a massive scale. So when a company announces that they're shifting to distributed work, that's not necessarily novel right now. I think what's novel about Dropbox's announcement is actually the way they did it. So they rolled out a whole plan this week around how they're going to become virtual first. And in that, they actually get into the specific nuances of what that will actually work. Things such as nonlinear work days. So basically the aim, knowing that they're going to have people working across different time zones around the world, they wanted to create a core block of hours where people will be expected to be online so that people can collaborate across time zones and continents. One of the things that they also did really interesting is they introduced this notion of Dropbox studios. So being virtual first, they're not going to be using their real estate and offices like they used to. What they are going to be doing is they're going to be tweaking these spaces into studios where employees in those local markets can actually go in to collaborate on projects, have meetings, obviously when it's safe to do so. What they can't do is actually work permanently out of those locations. There are spaces where you can go and you can drop in, and they're going to be looking at creating some of these spaces in cities where they don't have a physical footprint right now. But it's a really interesting way, and one of the first more concrete plans I've seen of companies that had moved from co-located office spaces and actually announcing what they're going to be doing with that real estate now that they've moved to virtual first. Another thing that they did is they rolled out a really interesting virtual first toolkit for employees. And in it, they get into some of the specifics around how to actually work asynchronously. And you know, again, for a lot of people that have been used to working in an office and now aren't working in an office, that's a big shift, and they realize that. And so they want to support managers, employees, etc., in making that adjustment. And you know you're onto something when the godfather of remote work, GitLab's Darren Murph, gives you a shout out for that step. So definitely check that out. And speaking of Darren and GitLab, they've actually also rolled out their new Async 3.0 platform. And so GitLab has been a pioneer in not just distributed and remote work, but actually open sourcing that work all along the way. There's tons of information. If you're watching this, you've probably pulled some inspiration from some of their resources this year in 2020 because they didn't just write the book, they gave it away. And they continue iterating and updating it. So Async 3.0 is the latest update on that. And another thing that's definitely worth your attention this week is Kleiner Perkins' State of People report. So they published that in Coda, and it's a really robust set of resources in a range of topics that we're working through in HR right now. So ranging from the impacts of COVID, people team structure, programs, metrics, compensation. It's a treasure trove of information for HR and people operators, so I definitely recommend you give that a bookmark. Another thing that I'm really excited about and interested to see how this unfolds is Zoom's Chief People Officer, Lynne Oldham, yesterday actually announced a new collaboration between Zoom, Splunk, Box, Uber, and Palo Alto Networks around designing the future of work. And it's called the FLEXWORK Coalition. Still in early days, but again, I think companies that are looking at this opportunity and all the things that are happening in 2020 as a great resetting for how the field actually functions and operates, I think are going to have a massive advantage over those that are still iterating from past practices. So check out her post. You can actually join the mailing list to be updated of future updates, and I would highly recommend that. For those of you in the US, many of you saw, several weeks ago, our current President signed an executive order eliminating diversity training that has language and framing in it that he found objectionable. This has rolled out. This applies currently to all federal contractors. So for companies that do business with the government, you have to actually abide by these new programs. And in these programs, and there's tons of information you can read out there that get into the specifics of how this is supposed to work. But the idea is you can't use certain language, you can't use certain topics that honestly, if you don't use them, you can't have a meaningful conversation around inclusion. And so they're starting to get some pushback. You're starting to see, there's an article in the Wall Street Journal this week about business groups urging Trump to withdraw the executive order. And so time will see how this plays out. Hopefully that groundswell will continue to, put a lot of pressure on the administration, which I'm not optimistic they're going to be responding to. But for people practitioners out there, you do have the power to do that. And speaking of, I'm sure the governing body of the field of HR probably has an important perspective and point of view on this. Yeah, okay, so maybe next week we'll hear something from that governing body. But that's a recap. This is a pilot episode. I may do more of these. Let me know what you think. If you're interested, leave a comment, hit me up, send me a DM, a tweet, whatever. Let me know if you think these are interesting and valuable. Thanks for tuning in.